The first time I said the sentence out loud, it tasted like old metal and shame. You made me keep him. Tom didn't answer right away. We were in family counseling room B, the one with the ocean print that's supposed to be calming and the tissue box that always comes half empty. Our therapist, Anika, shifted in her chair and said my name very gently, the way you talk to someone standing at the cliff edge. And I doubled down, because that's what I do when the words come out uglier than I meant. You did, I said. You talked about miracles and faith and how we'd figure it out. Like you were the one whose body would get cut open, whose career would stall, whose life would become an endless appointment. You made the case and I signed for the package. That's how we got here. Here was a 3-year-old with a diagnosis that arrived in the mail in a stack of reports. Autism spectrum disorder, speech delay, low muscle tone. Here was a calendar packed with acronyms. OT, PT, SLP, ABA. Our alphabet soup of extra. Here was a marriage that felt like a conveyor belt of logistics with 2 numb people standing on it, handing each other forms. Tom didn't argue. He never argues with a hot pan. He sets it down and lets it cool. That day he swallowed, stared at the carpet, and said, I told you I'd do it with you. He didn't say, you said yes. He didn't say, we were there together. He just picked up the pan I threw and held it until it stopped burning. The problem is, resentment is an acid that doesn't care whose hand it's in. I poured it everywhere. On Mondays when I was the one in the waiting room while our son stacked blocks on a therapist's rug. On Thursdays when I was the one bribing him with fruit snacks to get in the car seat while Tom stayed late to finish a proposal. On Saturdays when I canceled brunch and watched other women walking puppies and holding iced coffees like the world made sense. I said the line in my head so many times it turned into a belief. You made me keep him. You made this my life. The truth is harder, smaller, more boring. We were both scared. He reached for hope. I reached for control. We sat in a tiny exam room 4 months in, listening to a doctor say markers and supports, and Tom squeezed my hand and said, whatever comes, we'll meet it. And I nodded. I didn't say, no I didn't say, only if it's the way I pictured. I said okay, and then a year later I decided okay, meant he'd signed for the debt. You don't notice a crack until something heavy sits on it. Our heavy came on a Tuesday like any other. I was late to speech therapy and the parking lot was a maze. My phone was buzzing with a Slack message about a client deliverable I'd dropped. Our son was banging the back of his head against the car seat because a siren went by and he hates high-pitched noise. We got inside, he refused the swing. I couldn't find the snack that's the only one he'll accept on Tuesdays, as if his body understands calendars. The therapist smiled the way people smile at toddlers and broken adults. Rough morning. I wanted to say rough year. We were sitting on the floor when she asked if I'd considered parent training. It was not accusatory. It was exactly what she's supposed to say. Something in me broke. I consider 100 things a day, I snapped. I consider quitting my job. I consider running away. I consider that none of this would be happening if. I cut myself off because the thing at the end of that sentence is not meant for air. She wrote a note. That's her job too. That night I poured a glass of wine like a dare, and texted the only friend who still invites me places. Sometimes I hate him for convincing me to keep a baby we weren't ready for. The bubble turned into an essay I didn't need to write, with the worst sentence placed perfectly in the middle for screenshots. She sent back the worst reply. Sympathy I hadn't earned. You're allowed to feel trapped. I slept like a rock falls. The next morning Tom found the text on the iPad, because our messages sync. He didn't shout. He sat on the edge of the bed and said my name the way you say wake up. Not how dare you? He asked. Is that what you think of me? Of him. I told the truth. Not on good days. But too many days aren't good. We tried again. We're the kind of people who try until the glue is just smears. We did Anika every Wednesday. Tom started leaving work at 4 on therapy days, and then getting back on at 9, because the world loves to hand women flexible jobs and men flexible guilt. He put together a new bedtime routine that cut meltdowns in half. I deleted the group chat where women compare husbands like coupons. I made lists, Tom made charts. We met the heavies as a team for almost 2 months. Then I messed up in a way that has a door and a date stamp. It was the IEP meeting. If you know, you know. Half a dozen professionals on one side of a table and you, the parent, on the other. Everyone speaking calmly and kindly, but the words are saws. Accommodations, minutes, regression, goals unmet. There was a sentence about least restrictive environment that might as well have been less like the vision in your head. Someone said safety plan, and the air left my body. I heard myself say the thing out loud in front of strangers and Tom and a woman from the district who has perfect handwriting. I didn't sign up for this. The room went very still. Tom reached for my knee under the table, and I shook him off like his hand burned. You talked me into this, I said, but I wasn't looking at him. I was looking at a future I didn't know how to love yet, and I wanted to blame someone whose face I recognized. We finished the meeting. I signed the forms. I went home and cried in the shower until the water ran cold. That night Tom made pasta, and I said I wasn't hungry, and then ate it anyway standing at the counter like a thief. He put our son to bed. He came down and set a folder on the table. I thought it was the IEP copy. It wasn't. I talked to a lawyer, he said, and my body went light and hot. I'm not trying to take him away from you. I am trying to take him out of the middle of this. I'm filing for temporary orders. Primary with me, joint legal. You'll have a schedule, you'll have all the information, you'll be at every appointment you want to be at. But until you stop saying he is something that happened to you, I'm not going to let him absorb it. The way you talk about him when you're tired. He hears it. Maybe not the words. The weather of it. It felt like theft even though he was handing me a document with my rights written on it. You can't just take him, I said, but it came out weak because even I could hear how much of my argument was fear, not law. I'm not taking him anywhere without a court order, he said. I'm asking a judge to decide what's safest for him while we get help. If she says no, she says no. If she says yes, then it's yes because someone who doesn't love either of us made the call. He filed. Family court moves slower than pain but faster than denial. We each filled out declarations. Mine was a masterpiece of context and nuance. His was 3 pages of calm facts. Dates of missed appointments, a daycare pickup soothed by neighbors because I was 30 minutes late and unreachable, the text from the iPad, the note from the speech therapist about parent training and my reaction. He included pictures. Our son grinning at the zoo, stacking cups in the bath, asleep with his feet in the wrong direction like a comma. He ended with a sentence I wish I could engrave on the kitchen wall for the version of me who needed it a year ago. He is not the reason our life is hard. He is the reason our life is specific. The court appointed a guardian ad litem. We did interviews with a woman who wore comfortable shoes and asked hard questions. She watched us each do bedtime. She sat on our floor while Tom turned the bedtime visual schedule like a game show host, and our son put his Velcro stars in the right order, and I tried not to cry at how effortless it looked when he did it. She watched me melt down when the tablet time ended, and I had no plan except please. She wrote a report that did not hate me. It said I was overwhelmed and inconsistent, not cruel. It said Tom had been the more reliable caregiver for 6 months. It recommended temporary primary to him, with me on an every other weekend schedule, 1 midweek night, and full alternating holidays. It required both of us to attend parent training and individual therapy. It told us to grow up. The hearing was on a gray Thursday. No shouting, no TV drama. Just a judge who's heard versions of our story 400 times, and has a stack of other lives waiting. She read, she asked a few questions, she said best interests, the way a doctor says we're going to numb this. She granted the temporary orders. She told me directly that language like, made me keep him, is a wound my son will feel even if he can't parse it. She told Tom that martyrdom isn't parenting either, that he'd have to make room for my learning, not just my penance. We walked out of court into a different life with the same sun in the sky. Tom put his hand on my shoulder for a second. 1 second. And said, I'll send the schedule tonight. I'll bring him over after dinner so he can see the house the same day, okay? I nodded and tried to answer with adult words and got, okay, out again like that was my whole vocabulary. The first night without him I cleaned like a person paid by the hour. The second night I slept for 11 hours because my body finally realized there was no one to listen for. The third night I took the parent training homework seriously and watched all the videos with the boring hosts who use phrases like transition warnings and first then language. I practiced on the cat. I made little picture cards with Velcro. I showed up to speech and shut up and learned. I started therapy without demanding that Anika call Tom controlling to make me feel better. I stopped texting friends who threw gasoline on my resentments and started calling the one who says, "Okay, but what are you going to do?" 2 months in, the weather changed inside me. It wasn't a miracle. It was repetition. Our son said more, with a sign and then with a sound and then with the softest "mo" you've ever heard. And I cried into the dish towel because I could see the road we were on instead of the map I kept wishing for. Tom didn't gloat. He didn't send me articles with "told you so" highlighted. He sent me calendar invites and doctor summaries and a photo when our son climbed the little ladder at the playground without help. He stuck to the schedule like law and handed me grace in small, quiet ways. Like moving our midweek to Thursday when he knew Wednesdays are the worst for my job, or waiting out a tantrum on my porch with me instead of loading our son into the car mid-storm and leaving me to hate myself. By the time the final hearing came, the guardian ad litem recommended we keep the same structure for a year and revisit. I didn't fight. I asked to add 1 extra hour on Sundays for routine's sake, and Tom agreed. The judge smiled in that exhausted way judges have and said, "Good. Your son needs calm weather. Keep the forecast boring." Tom won, because he refused to let my resentment set his son's climate. He won because he didn't argue with headlines. He showed the court the boring, daily facts that matter for a child. He won because he separated love from logistics and chose the plan that kept our son's days predictable, while I turned my mouth into something safe. I still hate the sentence I said in that therapy room. I hate it because I meant parts of it when I was drowning. I hate it because it's the ugliest version of me. But you don't get to erase the ugly you said out loud. You only get to add a lot of quiet better on top until the shape of your life changes. On Sundays now, when he drops our son off, Tom hangs back at the door while our boy runs past me to the shelf where the Velcro stars live. "First snack, then park," I say, and the words work like magic because really they are just routine with good PR. Tom watches us for a second to make sure the weather is clear, and then he nods once and leaves. We are not friends. We are not enemies. We are a team that only meets for kickoffs and handoffs. That's enough. That's adult. If you're standing at a cliff edge with a sentence like mine on your tongue, don't throw it. Swallow it, take the class, do the boring thing, let the storm pass. Your child is not the reason your life is hard. Your child is the reason your life is specific. Specific can be beautiful if you stop looking for the map you thought you'd get. Hey everyone, thanks for watching. She tried to make resentment a policy and said the quiet part out loud. He didn't weaponize it. He documented facts, went through court, and got a custody plan that prioritized their child's therapy, routine, and safety. Lesson: family court isn't about who hurts more, it's about what helps the kid. If you liked this video, please subscribe for more. Thanks and see y'all tomorrow.